Hello and welcome to episode 27 of The Dive. I am Jat, joined once again by Kobe and Azael. Apparently, it says in the script here, the 70th time.
That's a lot.
Later. That's a lot of episodes. It's also the first episode that Azael gets to wear the cloud hat because you said C9 wasn't going to make playoffs.
I did say that.
Right. Kobe, yes. Tell him why he was wrong.
Well, we had a bet here. I forget what week.
They were 1-5.
I forget what week it was.
It was a good bet.
Azael has zero faith in Cloud9 when Reaper was switching out Jensen and Sneaky down to the Academy team. And we posed the question, are they going to make it to the playoffs or are they not going to make it to the playoffs?
Of course they would make playoffs.
There's no way.
They're Cloud9.
They were 1-5.
Truth be told, Azael punished for his lack of faith in North America's greatest international team.
Can you turn it a little bit? I want the Cloud9 logo
like
to be on camera. Towards the camera. Yeah, that's better.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
I think it's way better than the suit. Because the suit was going to be too clean and too cool.
Yeah, this can be repurposed. You know, if Cloud9 is doing well at Worlds, maybe if they make it there. Maybe we can auction it off.
There you go.
Yeah. So he's going to keep this on the whole episode, which is great. So if you're listening on SoundCloud or iTunes, thank you for doing that every week.
Listen to my pain.
But you should also probably check out the YouTube so you can see the ridiculousness of this hat. We're going to be talking about the semifinals in our NA LCS section of the episode. But first, we got to touch on our global news because the Asia Games happened last night. I stayed up until 3 in the morning watching it completely live, which means I have about 5 hours sleep, but I would say it's worth it because this was actually extremely competitive and really cool to see both Korea and China so try hard in this tournament. Spoiler alert, if you're going to try and find the VODs later, they are difficult. Go to like LOL event VODs or something to try and find them because they're on different channels than normally. There are about 100 bootleg Twitch streams that were using it for the games. But anyway, I thought the games were awesome. China won 3-1. The first 2 games, really the whole series was actually extremely close, save for probably the third game where Uzi went 12-0 on Zaya because they just set up a giant camp down bottom. Like literally, Gragas got level 2, ganked, level 3, ganked, like 4-man dives, 5-man dives. But he carried super hard. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that series?
I just thought it was really exciting. So I didn't stay up for the full series. So there was a big delay in between game 1 and game 2, and I fell asleep during that time. But I watched the highlights this morning, and I think it's really fun to watch because this is essentially like LPL All-Stars versus the LCK All-Stars, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're going into those matches, you're like, ooh, how serious is it going to be?
It's an Olympic setting, basically.
Yeah, but this was taken very seriously, as you said. It was super competitive.
Yeah.
I feel so stupid talking about anything in this hat. But
keep it up.
I was really hyped for how seriously they took it, and I get the feeling that it's becoming almost like this like personal thing for the Korean players and for the LCK to prove that they can just win something against the LPL. Like, yes, they won Worlds last year, but the events are starting to stack up, right? Like,
you think the burden of proof is already on Korea and on the LCK players?
Not
because they have dominated for so long.
It's not to prove that they are like are still the best or have been the best. It's more just I think it's like a personal thing. It had always been. To me, for a lot of the LCK players, a point of pride that they are clearly the best, always the best. No one can challenge them. And for the first time, they are being challenged and they are kind of being beaten a number of times. And my view is the community sentiment is starting to swing to, LPL is the best now, right? And I think it's just kind of interesting to see that. And I think it makes the LCK teams want to win even more. And it's just building the hype for Worlds to like unreal levels for me.
Yeah, I think the kicker will be if China wins a Worlds, then you can start to turn the wheels of, Korea needs to reprove that they're the best and all this stuff. But up until that happens, people are always gonna be like, oh yeah, it was just Rift Rivals, oh yeah, it was just MSI, oh yeah, it was just the Asia Games or whatever. But you can't be, oh yeah, it was just Worlds. Like, wait a second.
It was just everything last year.
You know what though? I think had the LPL not won MSI, Rift Rivals, and now Asia Games, and they did just win Worlds, there could be people that would say, "Oh, it's just Worlds. Korea's still won every
just one.
tournament." Yeah, it's just one tournament. But if
I don't think you can ever say, it's just Worlds.
so, in the conversation of which region is the best in the world, I think you can, because I'm actually no, seriously. I think if the LPL wins Worlds, I don't even know if it will be an argument who the best region in the world is.
Yeah, for this
when the
year,
LPL
for
does
sure.
a clean sweep of the year. Whereas had the LCK won those 3 tournaments and then the LPL won Worlds, I think it's still a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the difference for me between having a conversation about it and it being like the clear, clean sweep or whatever. But I don't think there's ever a time where anyone's gonna argue, it was just Worlds. That little tournament don't matter.
Well, I think it actually could if you're just talking about only regional strength, not just a team strength. Because I've heard people, you can make the argument that it's like, it's not actually, the region isn't that good. It's just this one team, right? But when you win all these things and your player and the events stack up and up.
RNG's also been their all-star team was 4 people on RNG, and then
but there was another guy,
which bodes really well for World, for China.
And also gave some of the LCK fans, I think, a bit of a reason, because I did see some people talking about it. Oh, well, you have the advantage, right? Like, it's actually better to not have an all-star team and just have an LCK team because you practice together. But Worlds, I think, there's an incredible amount of hype. It's so not a foregone conclusion now that there's actually people on both sides of the fence on who they think is going to win, who's favored now, what's the stronger region, etc. And I think that is just so exciting, because this is one of the highest level series I've watched in a while. Like, just the individual skill was incredible in this series, and it was a treat to watch. So I'm getting pretty hyped for Worlds.
Definitely hype for Worlds. You feel like doubling down on some Cloud9 bets? Maybe we bet on if they will make it to Worlds. We start adding pieces.
I mean, we have the hat now.
What if we got him like a
Do you want to get on this? Do you think C9's in Worlds? Do you think C9 will make quarterfinals again?
I think Cloud9 will make it to Worlds.
Yeah. What is the break point though? Quarterfinals at Worlds? You can make this bet now. Even
quarterfinal. Before they even make,
I think we got to add a piece to the outfit with each bet. So first bet is if they will get to Worlds. Then we can think of something else to add to this outfit, and then how far will they get in Worlds? So we keep adding more stuff.
I don't know.
We'll think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they're gonna make a Worlds for sure. But I have to see how they do in playoffs before I would feel confident to say that they're definitely gonna make it.
You got to see if they're winning playoffs to qualify for Worlds before you can.
I think I would be willing to bet if someone thinks they're not gonna make Worlds. I would be willing to take that bet.
Too late.
Yeah, I think you guys all believe
I think the boat is passed on those bets.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. So, Age Game pretty hype. I wanted to talk a little bit about there's been a lot of discussion about casters, not going to Korea for Worlds, and the community obviously very disappointed with that.
Well, also to clarify, it's group stage, quarterfinals, semifinals will be remotely broadcasted from here, and for finals, analyst desk and casters will be in Korea.
And interviewers will be on site for the whole time. So we're gonna have Shox Novelty there doing interviews. And just gonna give my own personal opinion. A couple people have tweeted and asked, and so on and so forth. And
it's been a huge topic of conversation in the community.
Yeah, exactly. So I am not going to talk about it from the financial side or from anything like that, because I don't really have a lot of insight into that. From a personal point of view, I think it's a bummer to not go. My favorite part of the job is casting in live venues, like in big venues. I think it's extremely exciting. I think you feed off the energy. So that is something that I am personally disappointed with. The only thing I will say that I think is going to be a positive from this is it's going to be a lot easier to produce content for us, like doing the dive and whatnot. It doesn't have to be bootlegged from a hotel room. We can do it on our set. So that's going to be nice. And I think there's more a kind of opportunity to do some pretty good content from here, as far as we have a better analyst desk setup at home than we do on the road and that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll be able to put on a kick-ass show and put out a lot of good content during Worlds.
Kobe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add. I would definitely like to go. I'm disappointed that we're not going, but our job is to put on a good show, and I think we can still put on a good show.
Yeah, I also want to add just more facts, I guess, just because last year in China was all 5 weeks for us on the road. Personally, being in a different country on the other side of the world for that long is actually pretty draining for me. So even though I'm going to be on nighttime hours, I will actually appreciate being able to keep my normal work commute and like general routine, even if I'm nocturnal. And I agree that this is not the same as being on site. But I also want to say, like, the LCK, for instance, remote broadcast most of Worlds last year from Korea. They didn't go on site until the finals. The Olympics, the World Cup, even, especially for North American broadcasting, a large portion of it is remote broadcast nowadays. And we've even remote broadcast a lot of stuff. World's Analyst Desk, the last time we were in Korea, was actually in this room for the majority of it. MSI 2015, even when it was in Tallahassee, was in this room. So the expectation of us being there has been set, which is why I think this feels extra bad that we're not there. But I don't want that to take away from my enjoyment of Worlds. Like, there are some things that I will be able to do better. Like when I say like whether I'm going there or not, I think I have a mixed reaction. I don't think it's purely negative from my like Analyst Desk only site.
Yeah.
We have so many tools here to do Analyst Desk stuff, and Analyst Desk in venue gives a better energy, 100%. But the conversation and the content is more lowly produced. We have no telestrator. We don't have the same access to replays. We don't have the same spectator slots. We don't have the same communication with production. Like, there are advantages to doing it from here, aside from cost. I think cost is obviously a decent driver on this one, but overall, I'm still wanting to look forward to the World Championship. The same reason that when we're in the EU LCS studio doing group stages there, you can be bummed that it's not the same size venue. But I still thought those group stages were awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to try and make it the best possible experience and just move on.
At the end of the day, I think Worlds is going to kick ass. I'm super hyped for it. So
As I can tell, you're rooting for your
rooting for NA.
North American
Never doubted him,
number one
Kobe.
team.
Never doubted him. But
I like
either way.
that. Also, by the way, because people are gonna be posting like pictures of this and stuff, and it seems it's gonna come off like Azael is this Cloud9 super fan. Woo!
I
Go
mean, he is. He's got
Cloud9!
Cloud9
You guys,
hat.
you guys saw
But
the episode.
actually,
I had the best predictions out
The
of it.
reason Azael is wearing this hat is because he did not believe in Cloud9.
Because it looks great.
And he thought they were doomed.
All right, meta.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about the solo queue experience in a while. One thing that's happened now with playoffs is you stay on patch that the playoffs started on the entire time, so we will become more than 1 week desynced with the live game. Playoff patch in North American LCS is on 8.16. I think that meta is getting fairly stabilized. There's also the solo queue meta that we used to talk about a lot on the show but have fallen off lately. Patch 8.17. What are some of your thoughts on that patch before we move into how you've been playing in solo queue?
The big one that stuck out for me is actually the Annie change. So Annie was how I learned League of Legends. That's actually like the first character I played. That's the first character I made. I played Annie support back when you started Doran Shield and you had super long range.
You can tell a lot about a person from their first champion.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like I didn't know the game, and I was doing with one of my friends who played AD, and they're like, "Play Annie, you can't mess it up." And I'm like, "Okay, I can do this." And I'd rush DFG every game, and I one shot people, and then I'd usually end.
Oh,
And
so it was
anyway,
back in the DFG days. So
Yeah.
there were some extra damage you could pump out.
Yeah, exactly. It was back in the day. But that was always really fun for me. Like the huge attack range buff. This is gonna be really interesting. 50 attack range is pretty insane. Annie does really struggle to trade with a lot of mages. In mid lane especially. There's so many people that just you don't get in range. You basically you're trying to hit 6 and all in them, and that's all there is. I think this increases some of your options for trading. I think this could potentially bring her back a little bit as a support because it also so much easier to proc spell Thieves with 50 extra auto range and not necessarily be as close to an Alistar or whatever. And this could maybe bring her back in some ways. And I think she's actually pretty exciting for competitive, even though she's such a simple champion, because Tibbers is such a strong like team fighting and kind of setup style ability.
Yeah, I think as well in the support position or the mid lane position, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the outranging problems she runs into are mid lane. Like if you're laning against the Xerath, he's poking you through the wave the entire time, and like you have to zig and zag and try and get up there. But this is a lot of range, so if you do go for a trade, then you get an extra auto on the way out. Is I feel like one of the big benefits from this. Because she's going to have such long range that after you've done your spells, you could probably get a little damage after. But to me, the biggest champion changes were Aurelia and Kassadin, because those are just two champions that, regardless of looking at the numbers, those are two champions whenever they change that are going to draw attention, right? Because Kassadin has the possibility of taking over games. He was in the Asia games actually.
Yep.
Already.
Azael
Pre-buff
pick.
Was used. So I definitely think that we will start seeing Kassadin, because a whole second off your Rift Walk in the level 1 Rift Walk is quite big for him. And then Aurelia, just more damage for Blade Surge, her Q onto minions. Gonna help her out because we saw her drop off quite a bit after the last nerfs.
I think the biggest change is to Nunu and Willem, Kobe.
I would agree.
It's a whole new champion.
Gotcha, Kobe.
He's got a giant snowball that he pushes around.
Did we phrase it as biggest change?
Well, you said I think the two biggest changes, and I'm like, I think that's wrong.
You got me, buddy.
Technically correct.
I have been defeated.
Other than that, I actually think patch 817 is pretty small. I definitely feel like the design team has scaled back pretty significantly on the amount of disruption they're introducing patch over patch.
Yeah. As was their goal.
As was their goal, because they said they actually went overboard in the preseason with all the changes in 8.9, 8.10, and 8.11. And it almost feels like they're starting early and getting it stabilized for Worlds. I'm going to be curious in the next couple patches if there's very targeted esports stuff or if they just let it go, right? Because there is arguments that we've had in the past about how similar should the playoff patches be for pros when compared to the Worlds patches, because the teams that qualify in the playoffs are the best teams on that patch. To then change the patch, you're wondering if you're really still sending the best teams.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind it if it stays low disruption for a little bit while.
Which is World's patch? 8.18?
I will have to get back to you on that.
Okay. I'm not actually positive.
It might be 8.19.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I definitely am in the same boat. I mean, I think that there's a benefit to allowing it to stabilize, allow the teams that are the best in playoffs to also be those best teams at Worlds, right? You don't want anything too crazy. But at the same time, if anything is like super egregious during playoffs, then hey, maybe you don't want that to stay the same, right? You don't want, like, especially red side, blue side disadvantages. I feel like it's actually come to a place where it feels pretty decent right now, where it doesn't feel like red side has as many necessary bans. So if that were to change, that would be a bummer. Because right now it actually feels like it's more of a play style thing, and there's more parity between the sides, which I think would be exciting for Worlds.
Yeah. As for solo queue, because that's what this patch is gonna affect.
Have you played Nexus Blitz?
I have not played Nexus Blitz.
How have you not played Nexus Blitz?
Because you know me. I'm a rank grinder. I don't play ARAMs. I don't play normal games very much. I play solo queue ranked, Jat.
But what if you want to learn a champion?
I know all the champions.
You know all the champions.
I know all the champions.
First game, Nunu Willem.
I have played this game since it was before season 1.
I like Nexus Blitz.
I've heard very good things about it, and I will play a Nexus Blitz game.
A lot of pros even love it.
Yeah, I've heard only positive things about it, so I'll definitely give it a try. But as I was going to say, solo queue. Have you been playing ranks?
Not a lot of ranked.
Azael hasn't played. When's the last time you've like really buckled
ranked
down for ranked?
I mean, I was playing some during Rumble and whatnot, but that's about it. Yeah. I haven't really played much ranked this year. No.
Yeah. Well, for me, since I've been using Graves Rush Stormrazor, I think that it has been just so busted. Because he's so good against so many of the champions.
You do Dark Harvest now?
You can carry super hard. I was doing sometimes Dark Harvest, sometimes Press the Attack, and even sometimes Phase Rush. I think I liked Phase Rush the least.
Phase Rush is so fun, though.
It's fun,
but I don't think it's that good.
I don't think it's good at all, because you could do the same thing with Fleet Footwork, which was probably the one I used the most. But I did try all of those. I think Fleet Footwork was probably my most successful, because it does give you basically phase rush and it heals you most of the time. So it's enough speed for me to like catch up to people and chase them down.
You're like perma full health in jungle always.
I'm
you
chasing Trundle and stuff. But anyways, I was always rushing Stormrazor because it's so busted on Graves. If you know how Graves works with Critical Strike, maybe like even a year ago at this point, but each one of his pellets, which he has 6 of from his shotgun, do 40% plus the critical strike multiplier that you have of damage. So if you add all those up, that's 2.4, for your crit value right there. And Stormrazor's first crit thing, like the extra percentage, it was 162 to 200 before
Mm-hmm.
applies to that.
Yeah.
And so not only was I getting, the speed boost from this and fleet footwork, but it's like a huge amount of burst damage. So I think that was, by far his best build was Rushing Stormrazor. They nerfed it
Before Warrior
on this patch. Huh?
Do you go Warrior Stormrazor?
If
or
you're
just straight
rich,
Stormrazor?
definitely.
Straight Stormrazor?
If you're rich, definitely. Having this thing completed is super valuable. I mean, if you're not super rich, you're not getting all the kills early, then you need to build your warrior. Eat your vegetables first, Azael.
Grow big and strong.
Before you have your Stormrazor ice cream.
Yeah.
But they did nerf it. I'm not, just by looking at it, I'm not quite sure how big of a nerf it is, because you do lose 5 attack damage and 20% off of that critical strike bonus that you're getting on your first auto
Before
attack.
you have crit.
Right. Before you have the crit, but you are getting 10% more attack speed. So maybe, I mean, they obviously nerfed it a little bit for rushing, and they made it more towards the attack speed side, which Graves is, feels good when you have the attack speed because it's smoother, but it's not going to be the same power level as the bursty style Stormrazor from last patch.
I think you should go Dark Harvest.
But that
Graves.
was, as a person who has played maybe like 2 Graves games or something, you're recommending.
You should go Dark Harvest.
Okay, thank you.
I think most junglers that used to be good with Electrocute are just as good, if not better, with Dark Harvest.
Dark Harvest, you can do a lot of damage, and I would like Dark Harvest if ahead of time I knew my team was going to be garbage, because you can pick up Dark Harvest when your team dies, and then you can still carry it that way, right?
You want the team fight where it's the last one alive.
Not knowing if my team is garbage or not heading into it, I think the overall best is probably going to be Fleet Footwork, but
right.
I like Dark Harvest as well.
Yeah, Dark Harvest has the highest highs.
If you want to,
like
if
the
you want to
floor is
1v, if you
lower.
want to actually 1v9,
Yeah.
I have a quick tip for Nexus Blitz for all of the subset of competitive players who also like for fun modes. It's a very small niche. I think so. In that game, there are 3 jungle camps that you double jungle. A lot of people don't realize that they share experience in gold, and they're worth a lot. So you should be trying to clear these camps on respawn, even if there's like something else happening, as long as it's not an event. Most people, for whatever reason, start at Gromp, and then there's a smaller subset of people that start at Raptors, and a very small subset of people that start at Wolves. What you should do if you have 2 like good clearing jungle champions is start their Wolves. Sneak there at the start of the game, because if it works, you get level 4 off of 4 camps, and they're stuck at level 2, which then allows you to clear red buff and bully down towards blue buff. Pro tip for the few subsets that want to dominate.
You want to hear the real crazy pro tip that I found out.
Okay.
So shout out to Medios, who actually told me this.
Are you talking about pulling the wolf into red buff for the explosion?
Yeah. You can also, so the wolf, when you kill the wolf, it explodes and does a ton of damage, and you can actually you can pull it over to red buff and help that to clear red buff. You can also start on wolves and pull the wolves to the Gromp and things like that as well, and greatly increase your clear speed, because when you kill it, it explodes, does a bunch of damage. I don't know how much exactly it is, but I think
it's a percentage health.
Yeah.
So it's like a 60% health or something. So on a red buff that has like 6,000
thousands of damage.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that your strategy, we think that people apply the term cheese too liberally to a lot of things.
You think this is cheese.
But going level 1 into start on an enemy camp or something is, I'm just saying, the type of strategy that people will label.
If it ever becomes too popular,
just putting it out there,
it's not going to work as well.
And in Nexus Blitz, the camp, it's not like SR, right? The camp's like your camp, and their camp is like here.
Okay, I haven't played it yet.
You're basically jungling in the same jungle. They're just like a little bit to each side, and then there's a tower defending your jungles. So it's like it is, but it's not as cheesy as like, I tried to start the red buff in SR. They found me, I lost. Right? Because
if they find you, you just back away. It's very hard for them to actually get behind you. Anyway, Nexus Blitz is fun. Play tanks, play AoE champions, have a good time.
And play hyperscaling 80 carries, because there's 6 items in 10 minutes.
Really?
Azael, what's your favorite champion right now?
In Nexus Blitz or just in general?
In League. Kobe said he likes Graves. I said I like cheesing jungle camps.
I mean,
that's a champion.
I like Kindred a lot still. I've been playing some Kindred. Mid lane, I've been playing some Kassadin ever since the tier change, because I always kind of like Kassadin. You can stack tier so fast now, so the Riftwalk buffs will be feeling pretty nice. Those are the 2 I think I've been kind of most enjoying. And then I've just been having a lot of fun playing roaming supports. So like Bard and things like that. I think there's just a ton of fun.
Bard got a buff too, bro.
That's true.
think it's time
It's time.
to talk about the greatest matchup in North American League of Legends history. I think Cloud9 versus TSM. These guys are the teams that have faced each other in the finals more than any other team. Prior to last split, TSM had made every single finals. There was a post on Reddit that said Cloud9 has never lost in the semifinals. You know who else has never lost in the semifinals? TSM. Because they've only ever lost in finals or quarterfinals.
Yep.
Yeah, or the quarterfinal time.
It's like one of those stats that is just true because of omission. Oh yeah, they either really suck or they make it to finals somehow. That means they're unstoppable.
It's math, Jad.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very big because you're talking about kind of the legacy of TSM and these stats.
Mm-hmm.
Only very recently did it become this, by omission, kind of fake C's style. Yeah, either they make it all the way or they go out in quarters. That was one time.
He's talking about Cloud9 though too. The only win.
But for I'm talking about for the TSM description, for the perspective.
Exactly.
That was literally one time. So this to me is so important for the organization, for them to make it that was just a one-time thing. I mean, they have struggled throughout this split as well. And they need to be able to, like Bjergsen was talking about, regain that same kind of aura and regain that reputation that TSM had as far as being this fearsome playoff, juggernaut that always makes it to the end. If you go out and twice before making the finals in a row, I mean, this won't be as bad as, quarterfinals in spring, but still, like that starts to create these worrying trends that Jet tracks.
I got a question. Parth is back on stage with them, and we got cameras on Reggie giving him pump up speeches before Game 5. Did they just revert to the Parth Reggie show, like with 2 weeks left in the season? Is that what happened? I'm so confused by
Follow-up question, is it working?
Apparently.
I don't know. I mean, it definitely seems like they are kind of slipping back into those tendencies, Parth having more of an impact on it, having more input, Reggie coming back in. But I don't really have the insight to know exactly what they are doing and what roles people are doing, because there's a lot of kind of coaching stuff going on at TSM, with Les Boy coming in and then kind of moving out for Parth and whatnot. So I don't really know what the coaching structure looks like, but I do agree that this is such an important series for TSM, because if you just go straight back to make it to finals all the time, then spring becomes like an asterisk, right? It becomes that happened, but it was just the one time, it was a fluke. It happens twice in a row. It happens 3 times in a row. Teams start to really kind of like doubt that team's strength right now, that team's kind of power and their history. So I think it's so incredibly important. And for Cloud9, they have been wanting, I think, with these guys, with Jensen especially, he's been chasing a championship for quite a while now, has never been able to get it, has fallen to Bjergsen a number of times, has fallen to TSM a number of times, and now it's this new iteration of Cloud9 with all these North American rookies, and I think it's really exciting to see all these young North American players versus TSM, who has essentially 3 kind of imports, right, with Bjergsen coming over, and they have the double European bot lane. It's kind of this clash of styles, this clash of teams, which I think is kind of exciting.
TSM, Grig is also North American talent. Hunter is North American talent. Hunter is definitely a veteran. Sure. Grig is a lot newer, but not only, I think it's just crazy that not only do Cloud9 have North American talent, which everyone said did not exist. Like, you can't find talent in North America. You have to import. People were so skeptical that any role, even maybe jungle, they would give a pass to. But Cloud9, not only do they have this North American talent that are mostly rookies,
they got 3 of them.
Not only they have more than 3. They have the widest stable of talent, and you just have to look at not only their 7-man playoff roster, but they're even giving away players as good as Smoothie to other top teams. It's like, and if you go back to the beginning of this year, they also gave away contracts. Like the amount of
insane.
The amount
Wiggly.
of talent.
They also gave away Wiggly.
And Wiggly. The amount of talent that Cloud9 has like built up and given away, and has on the bench, and Reaper is going through all his motivation training with all the different guys.
That's motivation training.
I mean, that's what they said at the beginning, right? It became a meme.
I've never heard of put as motivation training.
That's what I have decided to call the 2018 training regimen that Cloud9 decided to work with, because looking back at it, hindsight, you can be like, oh, it worked out. They brought Jensen and Sneaky back in. They just won all these games. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Now they went from last to second place. That's crazy, right? I mean, I guess you could also look at it and say, hey, if they had kept them, Sneaky and Jensen in and not put them in motivation training.
Did they even need the motivation training, Kobe? Were they just all good?
Would they have ever dipped down to last place? Did they kind of just create their own story of like, oh, we'll have to work our way up from last? And you're like, well, you put yourself there, buddy. Or was that necessary, right? Because we don't have the insight into what was going on within the team to know how necessary or how genius of a move that was from Cloud9 coaching. I think it's pretty interesting to look back and kind of think about.
Yeah, I think it is very cool, the story that has emerged, but I don't think we'll ever have the full answers until one of them decides to write a Dunzo manifesto 3 years from now that it just says all the things that were happening inside.
That's such an old term. I don't even know.
So the Dunzo manifesto refers to an old CLG player called Link, who actually wrote a 16-page. Was it even a Google Doc, or was it like a Twitlonger?
Might have been Twitlonger.
Yeah.
I remember reading it.
Everyone called it the Dunzo Manifesto because he basically said, I'm retired. Here's all the dirty laundry.
He used the word Dunzo in the
manifesto.
That's why.
Yeah. It was great. But for this team in particular, I don't think we'll see anything like that because they started winning, right? You can complain, like in the back of your mind, if you're Jensen or Sneaky, you can still think that, man, if they just would have put me in week 1 or week 2, we'd be first. But like they're second. Like, what are you really crying over? You're playoff seeding going into it. You won't have side selection if you meet Team Liquid in the finals. That's so small that I don't think it's enough for them to be salty about, if it's even true. So at this point, I think that it doesn't matter to the guys that are playing right now what they have gone through, and they're only going to look at it positively because they won in the end.
And I think that regardless of whether or not like they would have succeeded with this roster from the get-go, I do think it's advantageous like now that this has all happened and they ended up doing well regardless, like going through those trials and tribulations early, having that adversity early, I think does help you along the way, because at some point, your team is going to struggle. If you are going to make it to Worlds, you are going to struggle at some point. You have to deal with these stressful situations with, like
Sneaky
poor
and Jensen have been at Worlds and have struggled before, so it's not like they're introduced.
But it's the whole
to
team.
New.
It's Azael going in and out. It's Blabber fighting for a spot. It's the team as a whole dealing with the stress. The team as a whole dealing with failure. The team as a whole dealing with loss. I think that is an advantage going forward into tougher competition, not only in North America, but internationally. I think that there's a level of maturity that has to be reached to overcome that. And I think that, Cloud9 has, gained some growth from that.
It depends, on the individual as well, how you deal with, and how the team kind of atmosphere is and how it's phrased of you have a sub behind you that could take your spot. Is it a super intense, high pressure situation? Like, we have heard things secondhand from, different teams, and everyone always says, oh yeah, like TSM is super stressful and, it's all about performance and winning and stuff like that. I've also heard that, there's a lot of players on the Cloud9 one as an example that are really good friends with each other. And it's not kind of a you against your sub type of thing.
And that's what Svenskeren said when he first joined C9 in Spring Split. He said how much more relaxing the environment was. But I wonder how much that's changed now that he played half the split in Academy.
A little time of motivation training.
Do you ever come forth in that interview and you're like, so Blabber, how do you feel about Cloud9? Well, I really hate that Svenskeren guy. I hope he never gets to start. It's so stressful. I wanted them to cut him, you're never gonna say it. I feel like even if it's true,
I think that's a really good point.
You hope that it is a good atmosphere, and you hope that there is like some level of I don't know, like kind of happiness in the house and whatnot. But like at the end of the day, if it's you or the other guy, you always want it to be you, right? Like you want to be the guy who gets the start. You want to be the guy who gets the praise. You want to be the guy who keeps their job. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's competition. That's sport.
Yeah, my turn to talk.
Exactly.
Do you think Svenskeren and Golden Glue will see time in this series? Or rather, what situation has to happen in order for them to get time in this series?
I think that it's super interesting, this specific series, because Golden Glue has actually been good against Bjergsen and against TSM. So specifically here, I think this secret weapon that we kind of joke about, but also kind of blasted Team Liquid, right? Of Svenskeren and Golden Glue having the possibility of coming in is a very real option and a very real advantage for Cloud9, for Reaper, for them in this series. Bjergsen himself has said so many times, "Oh, I love practicing against Golden Glue. He's this scrim god or whatever, and he gives me a lot of things to think about." So I think the respect is definitely there, and it's a very viable option for them.
I think there's a good chance that they're going to see some play. I would be very surprised if they start. But I think if you're down 0-2, why not try it? And if you're up a game, hey, maybe it's worth the risk, like take a little bit of a gamble to kind of throw TSM and off and change up how they're having to handle you in pick ban. I think if they have as much confidence in that duo as they seem to be putting forth, then go for it, right? It's worth at least like one game to kind of make them have that in their heads and make them kind of show that preparation.
I'm thinking about it more, and I have a feeling that they're going to start them game one.
Okay.
I just have a feeling that they would, just to surprise them, they're going to throw out Golden Glue and Svenskeren game one because of the different player that Golden Glue is now compared to a year ago, and because Svenskeren has the history with TSM. I'm also trying to figure out, like,
why would that be better starting?
From a pressure perspective, I'm just trying to think of like the way that it was successful in the regular season. You would almost try and replicate that a little bit here. Like, if you're worried about Blabber's nerves of like, oh no, if I mess up, then they're going to bench me for Svenskeren. For whatever reason, I feel like he will be better in a situation if Svenskeren has already failed and they throw in Blabber, because that's how he entered the league in the first place, and you'd be trying to replicate that experience.
His comfort zone is when his teammate is failing.
Yeah. And he's the last available option.
He's just sitting backstage. He's like, yeah, this is great. We're
job.
Down 2-0. I'm ready.
Oh, that was good. That was good. Almost always, I'm like, yeah, I know where you're going. Boom! I like
out
that
of left
one.
field. Keep you guessing.
That was some good stuff. All right, continue.
That's it, actually. I think it would be all right if they really do think Golden Glue and Svenskeren are a cycle for Jensen and Blabber. I think you can run them game one. And then if you lose game one, then you put in Jensen and Blabber for the rest of the series. But putting in Golden Glue when they're already down and one more loss means they're out of the playoffs doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
But I feel like putting them in game one is actually a lower pressure situation for them. And I don't know, I think it'll work.
I'm on board.
All right.
Also because they always said Golden Glue was like, scrim god or whatever, and then it didn't always translate to stage.
Game one is probably the least pressure too. I agree with that, but I still think if you start Jensen Blabber and you get slammed 2 games in a row, not saying that's going to happen,
you would still put
it would still be worth trying to mix something up. But we've talked a lot about Cloud9, TSM side of things. I am interested to kind of hear your guys' opinions after the Echo Fox series, because I know that there was a lot of excitement from TSM fans. Hey, we're back. We did it. We're the best. I didn't come away from that series feeling super confident from TSM, because to me that series looked like Echo Fox, it felt like won 4 of the 5 early games, and even game 5 they had a strong comp, and it was a little bit back and forth. I think they were down a bit in goal, but they got the dragon and so on. It felt like it was Echo Fox's series to win, and they kind of threw that advantage away multiple times. And credit to TSM for capitalizing on that and never giving such big leads and disadvantages that they would have no chance. But when I think about that matching up with Cloud9, and I put Cloud9 in Echo Fox's shoes, because Cloud9 has a really good early game too, can TSM win from behind against Cloud9?
Nope. I mean, is my gut.
A lot of teams did in the beginning of the season, though.
Correct.
That's why they were in last place.
Yeah, they had a great
for
early
so
game.
long, right? Remember the talks for game after game after game. We're like, well, Cloud9 still have some of the best early game stats. They're making so many proactive plays early on. Licorice is doing well in lane. Azael's creating stuff, on the bottom side. they have
even Golden Glue was popping off mid lane.
yeah,
He just
Golden
wasn't
Glue
winning
is doing
games.
real,
Yep.
but in the late game they could not convert. That's why when the shift happened, and the veterans came back in, Sneaky
Yeah.
and Jensen, and everything seemed to work out a lot better in the late game. That seemed to solve a lot of those issues, but I don't think we should forget about how they got where they are.
I agree. I think that's definitely a possibility. But when I try and look at, and I know this is a little bit selective, but the last 5 weeks of the split, Cloud9 just looked so dominant. And even though TSM has picked up their wins in a pretty stark way, I think they won their last 4 games going into the playoffs. One of the 2 tiebreaker games, and then obviously the series against Echo Fox. So a big uptick. So many of those games were still extremely close, grindy. It almost felt like they made one more play than they did in the first half, and that was the difference between defeat and victory. And C9 just looked so good. So I definitely think there's a chance that the C9 rookies choke a little bit, and then the rotating mid lane jungle thing doesn't work out and ends up causing more disruption. But I think if TSM wants to win this series, they have to markedly improve in the next week. Because even though they've won a lot more games, I think they've actually minorly improved to get to those wins, and they're still not looking like the team they were supposed to be when they signed all those players.
And I know that people have been kind of harping on it for a long time, this split, but I think the most room for improvement is the bottom lane and the jungle for TSM. Everyone has been very excited to see Bjergsen back on Assassins. He looks so much more confident. He's much happier. He's got about 7 times the kills that he got on all these other control mages. And in the interview afterwards, he was like, yeah, I don't care. Ban out whatever assassins you want. I feel like there's plenty of them right now for me to play with. So that just, for me, just makes me excited to watch those games, right? This is the old North American #1 matchup, Bjergsen versus Jensen, that we were used to. And it feels like heading into this series, we have an option to kind of revive a bit of that past excitement of like our 2 greatest mid laners going head to head, with the added wrinkle that Golden Glue may be this like kryptonite sub-in sort of curveball thing that they can like throw in.
He's not the kryptonite anymore.
I think
it's Golden Glue.
I think it makes it pretty interesting. And then of course, if we're also talking about all these mental things with the rookies and stuff like that, but even the guys that aren't rookies, Jensen and his, issue with TSM, he hasn't not won yet. He has had a long history with
He hasn't beaten TSM.
And Cloud9 hasn't won a best of 5 against TSM since 2014, I think it was.
Yeah, it would have to be 2014 spring.
Yeah.
So those were completely different teams.
Exactly. So it's been a long time. There is a lot of history kind of working against them. And it's interesting, the assassin point. Like, I was thinking a fair bit about this, and it's I so badly want to see that assassin versus assassin mid lane. Everyone wants to see that. But then I think about it and I'm like, well, isn't it just smarter for Jensen if Bjergsen is going to play assassins and we're thinking, okay, Bjergsen has to be the guy to be proactive. Bjergsen has to be the guy to dictate the pace of the game. Shouldn't you just play Zillion and Galio and Lulu and you know what I mean? Like things to like answer and
because have you seen what he did? He played
colleague game.
Okay, it was different people.
Yeah.
But he played versus those champions. They're very different people. That's why I said at the beginning, this is a given. But he demolished them, right? And if for Cloud9 you decide to take that back seat and you're like, okay, fine, he's gonna be the assassin player. We're gonna force Bjergsen to actually make those super big plays. And we're going to be the reactive ones, or we're going to,
It's not about taking the back seat. It's about not having having a more defensive matchup, right? So it's like we've still
that
seen,
is taking the back.
No,
that's exactly what I
Jensen,
mean when I say
still
take
seen
the back
Jensen
seat.
though play Zillion and then play heavily around mid lane. You can still play proactively.
I think Zillion's a very unique pick though, because you also mentioned like Galio and stuff.
I think Galio can do the same thing against Savage.
Galio can get just absolutely destroyed though. We have multiple LeBlancs destroyed him so early on. That opens up and makes it easy for Bjergsen to roam. So I'm just arguing the other side here for you. You're kind of opening the door for that win condition for them to have Bjergsen, take over on Assassin. That's what he wants to do. That's what he's looking to do. So for me, instead of taking, kind of the backseat and like giving him the option to do that, I would pit Jensen against him. Send him in on the Echo. Send him in on the Fizz.
I mean, I just sent him in on Orianna.
Yeah.
That's like a mix of the two. That's lane dominant and defensive.
Yeah, Orianna did get Sumner, so she's
still
good in some matchups still.
I see your point, but I just don't agree because I just think Cloud9 is better across the map, and I think they have a more proactive, better jungler. So it's like you don't have to have the crazy 1v1 volatile like solo kill to beat Cloud9 or for Cloud9 to beat TSM, right? Whereas I feel like
But you do need to be able to hold Bjergsen down from
I
doing
think
that.
you can do that with your jungler
Until you have a
camping mid
10
and
kill
gank assist.
Akali or LeBlanc or Aurelia on your hands.
Galio has great gank assist.
He
You just
does.
bring your jungler there over and over.
But so if your Galio is at half health starting from lane, then he comes and assists.
All right, reel it back. Mid lane champion pool aside.
For the record, I do think
want.
Cloud9 is favored in the series.
And I think
just want to
Cloud9
argue from the other
Who
side.
will win, and what is the series score?
I think it's 3-0 or 3-1 Cloud9. I don't think TSM has too much of a chance in this. I've talked to a lot of pros recently. Almost all of them are saying not only is Cloud9 heavily favored here, Cloud9 is the best team in the league. And the reason Bjergsen was calling out Doublelift is because he was trying to dodge Cloud9 and because they think that TSM doesn't stand a chance against Cloud9. So I think it's really interesting as far as the matchup goes, because if TSM wins with like all of that buildup, I think it's incredible, and maybe they are going to reach those heights.
Then if Team Liquid also made it and we got to see Team Liquid versus TSM after the trash talk, and Bjergsen versus Doublelift again,
but I think C9 is going to slap him down. I think C9 is too good right now. I think that unless their rookies are choking, this team has just looked so much more solid than TSM. If TSM shows a similar series to what they did against Echo Fox, I think they get blasted. And that's me wearing the Cloud9 hat of shame, where I didn't even think they were gonna make playoffs. I just think they've gotten so much better.
Yeah, I don't see Licorice choking. I don't even.
Why don't you see Licorice choking? Just
because he has been so consistent, even in the games at the beginning of the season where Cloud9 was going through their roughest patch. They were down to 10th place. To me, he still looked to be performing really well. He was still doing well in his lane. He was still playing well with the team. And it wasn't just, oh, he's on this counter pick, split push top or whatever, his Poppy game, or he's trying to play tank for the team. He also has the most kills on the team. He's protecting. So for me, that Licorice has really proven himself to me already.
What about
I would be.
He wasn't great in spring playoffs.
That's true. I would be more 50-50 on maybe Blabber, just because so many of them cautioned against the possibilities of him literally turbo feeding, I think was their term, or something like that.
Gotta be careful that doesn't happen.
Where he would jump into the enemy team. But he has they've been able to utilize it really well so far, so we haven't seen those problems, but they have cautioned against it. So that's the only ones where I might see a feeling, but I think Cloud9 are definitely favored.
Series score,
I would say 3-1, but because maybe there's a game where Bjergsen does get past 10 kills or something on Assassin. But yeah, I think Cloud9 definitely are favored heading in.
I agree. When I first saw the way TSM squeaked by Echo Fox, I'm thinking, all right, C9's going to 3-0 him. And I don't think my opinion has changed on that. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be super hype if it went the other way. And the way that has to happen is I think Bjergsen has to go monstrous in the series, the same way he went monstrous against TL and the same way he went monstrous on that Aurelia game against Echo Fox. And I think Sven and Mithy have to actually be the best bot lane in the West. Because if those two things don't happen, I don't think TSM wins.
They have gotten killed in lane a lot.
Yes.
This split. So yeah, I kind of
That's why I'm saying C9 3-0. Right?
Yeah. And we look a lot at kind of raising the ceiling and being like, all right, Bjergsen has to have these crazy performances again. But you can also be like, oh, we should probably raise the floor. And that would give him a good chance too.
I mean, if your bottom lane for TSM is just winning each game, that changes things a lot, right? Like that changes the dynamic of the game so heavily, because I'm looking at this through the point of view of I think bottom lane is generally very passive for TSM. I don't expect them to be slamming C9's bottom lane. If they are, well, then all of a sudden your jungler can't just camp mid. They can't do that sort of strategy to hold down Bjergsen. And then it becomes much more difficult if Bjergsen is given freedom to get a 1v1 advantage, to your point. Then I think all all the things you're saying about, assassins versus kind of these supportive champions really does become an issue, right? If you're isolated in that 1v1 where you're expecting to have it, get it camped, things can change up a lot. And we know that Zen and Mithy have an incredibly high ceiling. So if those guys can step up, take over games, that would be very big for them.
Yeah.
How do you guys see Haunter versus Licorice, that matchup?
I think it's actually volatile.
Yeah.
Dude, he won on NA Jace.
I know, and
he did it.
1,000 damage per minute, Kobe. I thought Haunter was actually pretty bad for the first 6 weeks of the split, but he's actually been really good for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think he's somewhat of the understated performers on part of this TSM resurgence, but I still think Licorice has been better for most of it, and I think Licorice should be able to win this. And that's kind of why I asked you earlier why you think Licorice won't choke, because that's the way a lot of people still think of him in the spring split when he was so dominant for the first half, and then down the stretch wasn't able to transition to a different champion pool, wasn't able to win in playoffs. And I think there would be a real internal fear for Licorice that could happen again, especially against someone who has been as clutch as Haunter in playoffs.
Talking to Licorice, he doesn't seem like he has a lot of internal fear, but this is definitely hype because this is the battle for who is the best North American top laner, like native North American top laner. Like for so long, it was Haunter, right?
Yep.
Everyone would be like, oh, well, it's all these imports and Haunter. And now it's, Licorice is the new talent on the scene here.
Yeah,
So
I'm trying to think if there's anyone else even in the conversation, but I agree. I think this is.
Yeah, I guess Lorlo and Solo.
Darshana has really fallen off. I don't think Lorlo really is in there. I feel like Solo is the best of those bunch that you mentioned, but I definitely put these guys above.
Impact becomes non-import next year. What about him? I want to move on to the next matchup with versus Hunter Thieves. So TSM C9 is the rematch of the 2017 Spring Finals. This is the rematch of the 2018 Spring Finals in the semifinals. So if TSM C9 didn't exist, this would be the most hype matchup of the weekend. We actually have amazing semifinals, in my opinion. One thing that is working against the hype of this matchup, though, is Liquid's domination of 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
The fact that
6-1, I think.
I think all time 6-1, but the last 5 in a row, because they 3-0'd them in the spring finals and they 2-0'd them throughout the regular season, and then they opted to play them even though they were the higher seed. So they could have picked TSM, who was the 4th seed and who was the lower seed, but they picked 100 Thieves because they've honestly beaten them 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will that change is the question.
I think for part of the reason I think also for them picking 100 Thieves is you talk about early game and, things going unexpected, I guess, in a best of 5. When you pick 100 Thieves, you feel way more prepared.
Yeah.
Because, and we saw it already in their quarterfinals, but when these guys are in, from champion select through the first 15 minutes of the game, you can be pretty sure what you're going to get. And I think that might also have something to do with it, right? They've beaten them consistently. Plus, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of surprise cards that 100 Thieves are going to throw out. Yeah. Aside from someday, every once in a while, kind of pick with Darius or something.
And that's what I think. 100 Thieves should know that too. Everyone in the league, I feel like, is looking at this and saying, okay, well, 100 Thieves want to play a slow late game style that's revolving around Cody's son. TL can just do that with double if probably better, right? So I feel like 100 Thieves coming to this series, they already saw how that series went in finals. You hope, or at least I hope, that they are preparing some more crazy picks, that they are looking for some different strategies. The Poppy into Lee Sin against Echo Fox was great from Anda, right? Darius as a counter pick. If you can actually have someday, and you're picking red side each game you can, and you're putting someday in really, really strong matchups against Impact, and he's slamming him, that's a way that you can get an advantage and actually take over this game. But I do think it requires a little step away from what they have shown us traditionally through the regular season, because I think if they play slow paced, if they play, just the same style that they have been doing, it's going to be rough.
I think when we talk about the other series, we have a lot of words like, this team has a really high ceiling. This team has a lot of potential. It almost feels like 100 Thieves has been at close to their ceiling for a while. And that's why I think a lot of people don't get that excited about this team. As you mentioned, you kind of know what you're going to get with this. You don't expect Ryu to pop off and get 15 kills, right? You don't expect.
But he did do double the damage of anyone else in that game in quarterfinals on
He went
Rise.
8-0-8 on Rise. So in a sense, that was his pop-off game, right? But he was also up against Keen, who was the weakest mid laner in playoffs. So it becomes difficult to get very excited about this team. And the other thing that Azael mentioned there was just the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Where is 100 Thieves supposed to be stronger? Because in the instance of someday trying to take over the game against Impact, I feel like Impact's made a career about not letting people do that. That's his best quality as a top laner, is you don't need to help me and I will not lose. He's actually not I don't think Impact's a good carry player. I don't think you should use him as a primary carry. But he's amazing if someone else on your team is a primary carry. So I don't see teams. This is why he always beats Hooney in the playoffs as well, I think, is because you don't win by carrying against Impact. So I think 100 Thieves has to win another way. And then you're saying, is Ryu and Cody Sun going to do this against Doublelift and Pope Elter? And I just say no.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think like all the history does kind of go in your favor with that, you know, and you just have to hope though that you can push Impact onto something like in Pickman. I feel like that you can get a more volatile matchup, right? Because I just feel like it's tough, right? Do you really see them winning by playing a really slow game against TL? I just don't. I feel like I just don't think you win that really, really slow late game where both teams are depending on your marksman. Doublelift has shown that he's a stronger marksman. He's a stronger late game team fighter, I think, than Cody Sun, and I think they have a stronger laning phase as well. Unless you have that X factor, if it's Afromu playing playmakers and finding perfect engages, sure, that changes the game up. If it's, you know, someday having great counter picks on red side and slamming top lane, that changes the game up. These are the sorts of things I think that they need to do to really have like a splash in this series and to really kind of make some changes. Maybe it's Anda playing some really early aggressive thing where he can influence these lanes, because they can certainly win if they get ahead, if they get some sort of advantage. But I think playing a slow game and expecting to like go down a little bit in laning and then win is too much. Laughing at my hat.
You're jiggling.
What you looking at, Kobe?
I'm sorry, you had a good monologue.
I thought you were a
but you
C9
started
fan.
jiggling a little.
Why are you talking about 100 Thieves and TL?
But the reason I kind of groaned at the beginning is when you mentioned like trying in Champ Select to get Impact onto a more volatile
I know it's
match.
hard. Not saying
I
they
was
will.
Thinking, yeah, I know. It made me think back to like Impact has literally soaked 7 bans and then pulls out something like the Singed or you know, it always seems like he's very well prepared to go as deep as necessary into his style of champions. And everyone for so long has tried to be like, hey, Impact, you want to duel me? Huh? You want a Fiora Riven matchup or something like that?
He usually says
buddy?
he would rather win the game.
Yeah, exactly.
So he does that.
There's like a couple Gangplank games, but you know, maybe he had like maybe a Kled game or something like that. But they're pretty rare.
Yeah, he had the 05 Darius game, which is like as close, and an 07 Gangplank game. Those are his two. The 07 Gangplank game was actually at Rift Rivals. So if you even want to count that, but those are like the worst kind of feeds or whatever of the season. Then he had 2 Orin games where he was 1-5. But yeah, generally, I mean, he doesn't have like games where he's just getting slammed. I totally agree with that. Even this Rumble game most recently against TSM where they lost, I thought that was a pretty poor game from him. But it wasn't about him. It wasn't about his lane getting slammed. That was Bjergsen 1v9 on a Kali, right?
I think if you get him on Rumble, that's actually good for you.
Yeah.
But I think Team Liquid learns from that as well. Like the TSM game, they wanted to be TSM, but they didn't have to. They were locked for a seed regardless.
Yeah, I just think the bottom lane is going to be such a big problem. Doublelift always smashes Cody Sun. Like always. I think I actually want to ask stats to look at some all-time stats.
Of Doublelift
thinking about it.
Cody.
Yeah.
Just literally Doublelift versus Cody Sun. Because I feel like every time I remember it, he's got a 20 CS lead in lane or something, bunch of kills. So
Yeah.
There's the
that
added.
might be interesting.
I mean, we said this last time when they faced in the spring split. There's the added fact that they also swapped supports from last year, right? Like they literally did play in the summer finals of 2017 as Cody Ole and, well, not double Afro. It was double bio, but double is very familiar with Afromu. Predictions for this series? I feel like these are less dynamic teams than the TSMC9. Like both of these teams have been relatively consistent throughout the entire split. So we kind of know what we're going to get. But what is your prediction?
I'd say 3-1 for TL. I do think that probably is a smart coach, and I think that there's some really smart players on 100 Thieves, and I give them the benefit of the doubt that they're at least going to try to change something up enough that they can get a win. But I think even in changing up your strategy and doing that, that's really difficult because it's hard to play those other styles. There's a reason that they stick to the same one all the time. And I think it's going to be really, really tough if you're trying to play a similar style as another team and they're just like a better version of what you're doing.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that much. I actually think that this is probably a 3-0 for Team Liquid. And as awesome as it is to have these matchups in the semifinals and the whole split, I've just kind of been waiting for teams to break apart from the pack because we had so much parity. I think that actually happened with C9 and TL down the stretch, and I hope that it continues into the semifinals because then it would mean we actually kind of have a strong team emerging. And I think if TL doesn't take care of 100 Thieves and if C9 doesn't take care of TSM, then I don't think either of those teams are like going to win the split. I think both these teams should be able to 3-0. Kobe?
Agree.
3-0?
Big agree. 3-0, 3-0.
For those on podcast, Kobe is shaking his head, but doesn't look that happy about
He
it.
looks sad about the 3-0.
Yeah.
He's contemplating.
I mean, they've consistently beat them, and I just think the bottom lane is going to be such a big issue that it's the game plan for 100 or for Team Liquid doesn't seem like it's going to be stopped.
All right, so on to Twitter questions then. Our first one here comes from Tim Smith Curie. And he asks, do you think the game would be improved if teams could ban a keystone? Depending on when in the draft phase, it could be a general ban. We don't want to play against Unsealed Spellbook or a target ban. Someone picks Nar, Jace, you want to ban Airy or whatever.
If there's a champion that only works off one keystone, then you're in trouble. That feels really
Yeah.
bad.
Are you allowed to you do it before the draft or after the draft? Because he said he doesn't have a specific
You can
one.
choose. It's before the draft.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like it because I think that discourages diversity more than it encourages the diversity.
What if there is, to play devil's advocate, so I agree. But what, in the world and where everyone's like, everyone just plays tanks every game. Well, can you like ban out Grasp and Unsealed Spellbook and maybe now they don't want to play tanks and you get some more carries?
Maybe.
I'm not liking it because it feels like it limits options so much. I feel like the only positive to it would be if the balance team is super messed up on some of the keystones and one is just OP or something like that. But yeah,
what I would like, as far as like this is an interesting thought. But if there was gonna be any change to bans that is like really trying to do, I would want to force more diversity. So if anything, I would rather it be something like bans are like cumulative for a series. So it's like the stuff that's banned from game one is, you know what I mean? Like almost something like that, where it's like, oh, you have to rotate through more champions. You have to play new stuff because guess what? You're on game 5. Now there's like 50 bans.
You only have to ban Zoe once.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be fun? I think that I don't know if it would be good for the game, but I think it would be fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I always like theoretically thinking about ways to make professional teams play more champions that you only see in solo queue.
Can only pick champ once per series.
I think that's always fun, right? If you find any sort of way to get professional teams to play more champions that you only see in solo queue, and there's Shakos and Garens and
Wukongs.
I was gonna say Heimerdinger, but Heimerdinger's all over the place. Flying around.
Crazy solo queue champions like Janna.
Yeah.
And Nami. With high explosive action.
And Arden Snitzer in Redemption. Tristan Campbell, next Twitter question, says, during quarterfinals, I noticed supports like JJ and Mithy running Minion Dematerializer on Shen. Could you explain the strategy? I don't get why we'd run that on a tank instead of on a wave clearer. Why not the CDR rune for Shen ult, for instance?
This is kind of a two-parter. I would say generally it's just about like, so when I've played Shen's Abort, we just want to be heavily roaming, and oftentimes, and it's like your actual fighting, your trading is really poor. You want to have wave control, push them in, so you're not actually interacting a lot of the time.
Then you can ult out.
Exactly, and then you can ult out. You can do things like that. So it's more just about being able to push the minion wave, so you can actually do things elsewhere. And then the CDR thing, I've actually talked with some coaches and pros about, because I had always felt like CDR on Shen and solo queue is so incredibly strong because there's nonstop fights. You want to ult as much as possible. In pro play, the reasoning I have been given that CDR is valued less on Shen is that the gameplay, like the pace of the game is slower. There's more setup that they feel they have to do. So your ult is, generally speaking, ready whenever you want to fight anyway, even without investing a ton into CDR. And that's kind of some of the reasoning.
And I know you got that a while ago, but I don't
fully agree with it anyway, because I always feel like you can use it proactively.
Yeah.
But that's the reasoning I've been given. So I just figured I'd throw that out there.
And I think anytime you're talking about minion dematerializer, it is a spell that I think is better in more organized environments because it's all about whether or not you can get the push, because that's what allows you to roam. So sometimes you're going to take dematerializer on Shen if you're into another melee matchup and you want to be able to get the push, right? So it is a case-by-case basis. In fact, in the salty runback game that we had between 100 Thieves and FlyQuest, JJ actually didn't bring minion dematerializer in game 1, was pushed in, and they were down 10 or 15 CS, brought it in game 2, and they got the push. And they actually won that lane by 10 or 15 CS. So whoever can actually get level 2 first early on, and whoever can clear the cannon wave first, is actually super important for pro lanes. So that's why I think the main reason teams take minion dematerializer.
One more little tag on too, something I forgot to mention, is that it's actually pretty good if you're in a losing lane. Just using dematerializer on every cannon keeps your turret alive a lot longer, because cannons soak like 8 turret shots, so it gives them a lot more time to actually hit your turret.
Yeah, like a mid laner will use 1 on range, 1 on melee, 4 on cannon. Sometimes supports use 6 on cannon.
Exactly.
It's better that way. Last question. Miles Petitry Allen at Bardas Bay. At what point in the game is it optimal to sell a Doran's item? Is it worth it to do it early in the game to finish first or second item? And what point is it permissible to sell boots for more stats? So another two-parter.
And that definitely depends on the champion. If you're something that spikes really hard on 1 or 2 items, then selling it to get that item completion, knowing that there's an incoming fight or something,
Triforce
means everything. There's such a big difference in combat power from having pieces of an item to something like Triforce actually completed. That can very well be a use case. Also, if you don't get to that point, then you just run into inventory problems and you want an extra slot for control wards, then that's also a good time to sell it. It's never bad to have in your inventory, but if you have something that's pushing it out, like you need that control ward spot or you need a higher value item completed, then I don't feel bad about selling it.
Yeah.
I've even had times where I'm playing Evelyn and I have one of the Dark Seals, which also actually has a very good resale value, even better than Doran's. And I sell it super early on just to complete my Runic Echoes, because Runic Echoes has a giant jump in power when you complete it, up to 80 AP from this like garbage little mana crystal and stuff
and
that you're
proc.
holding on to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So big power jumps like that are definitely worth it, and you should think about playing around those when you make that sell. That's when you should be changing your gameplay.
All right. Got any final thoughts before we wrap up the show? I like your hat, Azael.
Thank you.
All right. I got an announcement, actually. The Dive Live will be happening for our finals episode. So we'll be doing the Dive Live in Oakland at the Esports Arena. That's going to be on Thursday of next week at 7 p.m. And you can get tickets for this. It'll be tweeted out at 8 p.m. for details if you want to go to the Lolly Sports Twitter. So
the Flying Dragon will drop.
Definitely check that out. But that's it for this episode of The Dive. We're going to be back next week, as I just mentioned, for The Dive Live. But before that, we have the NA LCS Semifinals. Cloud9 versus TSM on Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, and Team Liquid versus 100 Thieves on Sunday at noon. So that is going to be hype, and we'll see you then.
We will. Or at least you'll see us.
Creepy.